Go Jackers.
Good morning, all, and welcome to Rec Talk. As we approach Christmas here, I think this will be probably the last video we put out, but I appreciate you tuning in. And if you appreciate these videos, go ahead and give this a like and subscribe. It helps me out. And if you want to go further, no pressure. There's a PayPal link in the description if you want to support the show, and give us a follow on Twitter and join the Discord. We have a ton of fun there. Again, I had a ton of fun on the Georgia Tech live show. I want to really thank Bryce Koon for coming on and supporting what CDogg and I do. I imagine the next Georgia Tech live show will be on the Rec Talk channel. So it appears we have now possibly made our last hire on the Georgia Tech coaching staff. They've all come on the offensive front. The entire defensive staff was retained, and I'm okay with that. The Georgia Tech defense was really good for the positions that they were put in this season, with the coaching change, with the many times completely inept offense. Defense wasn't the problem for Georgia Tech. So let's review the staff hires we have made. Biggest one, we hired Buster Faulkner from UGA as our offensive coordinator. Still, I guess, unclarity on what his role will be with Georgia going out. I've taught that to death. But also, it's been announced that Chris Winkie will be the co-offensive coordinator. And I'm excited about that. I mean, both those guys are very talented at what they do. You look at what Buster Faulkner did with Stetson Bennett. For all the hate that the Tech fan base and really everyone that's not a Georgia fan will give Stetson, like I've said, he's very fundamentally sound, and Faulkner has found a way to get the absolute most out of Stetson Bennett. So I'm definitely excited to see what he's able to do with Haynes King. Or possibly Zach Pyron, depending on who starts this coming up season. I would think probably Haynes King, just with the injury that Zach Pyron suffered. So we've made that hire. We hired Jeep Wade as the offensive line coach. What other position? Running back, Norval McKenzie. We hired from Vanderbilt as our running backs coach. So a lot of things shaping up kind of nicely for us. And like I've said, look, for what the stock of Tech football is right now, we're not going to go out and probably get someone from a big Power 5 program that's developed a ton of NFL talent to make a lateral move over. The reason we were able to get someone like Buster Faulkner is we were able to elevate him in position from an offensive analyst to an offensive coordinator. So, we have hired a wide receivers coach, which Alexander Del Rio, who was our offensive coordinator, is at UNLV. And I could be wrong, is, what's his name? Ed Orgeron. Is he at UNLV now? I'd have to look. But we have hired Josh Crawford from Western Carolina University. He's been there for 2 years. He is their co-offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach. And Western Carolina has had a pretty impressive offense. I believe they're ranked 6th nationally per the On3. I think they're the outlet that broke this. They're ranked like 6th nationally in total offense, or have been at some point in the 2 years that he's been there. They won their bowl game this year against South Alabama. But from what I see, that's the only collegiate collegiate coaching experience that Josh Crawford has. Now, before then, and this is what, in my opinion, makes this, an interesting hire, is for like 10 years, he was coaching at top level Georgia high school. So he was at Valdosta High School for a while. I believe he was the offensive coordinator at Colquitt as well. Now, to me, does that mean much for the kind of college coach he is? No. I would look at his experience and success that he's had at Western Carolina for that. But what it does tell me is that he most likely has very good relationships with the better high school programs in the state. and that is valuable. So if Tech wants to keep, stepping up to the next level from really where we have been the past 3 years, bottom of the barrel Power 5 program, stepping up to mid-level, stepping up to competing for your conference, and then possibly stepping up with the expansion of the playoffs to a 12-team playoff, getting to the playoffs. The biggest key to doing that consistently is going to be recruiting. Now, we talked about the recruiting class, in the last video on the live show, and there could be some absolute diamonds in the rough, baller players, freak athletes in these 2- and 3-star kids that we've signed. And I'm sure there will be. I mean, before Collins got to Tech, the MO of Georgia Tech football is really outstanding coaching and getting the most out of the players that you have in your program. I was just looking through the comments on the last video, like Damaris Thomas was a 3-star kid. I think Adam Gotsis, who ended up getting drafted in the 2nd round, defensive lineman for Tech, was a 2-star. Tech has been very good. I don't know, before Collins and maybe even, really under Paul Gotsis played for Paul. Like, we were able to really develop kids to be really impressive athletes and really impressive at the position that they play. I'm thinking of Darren Waller too. The thing is, when you look at teams that are going to consistently make the playoffs in the 12-team structure, and when you look at teams that consistently compete for their conference, these are teams that are generally, and I'm going to use the word elite recruiters. I had and still do have a ton of respect for Mark Richt. I think he's an excellent man. I think he was one of the better offensive minds in college football when he was at Georgia. It's just that when Kirby got in, he was able to step up from a program that was competing in recruiting or finishing in the top 10 to finishing in the top 3 every year. And you're seeing the results of that on the field. Now, do I think Tech will ever consistently recruit in the top 5? Not unless some things change, and it's a very complicated question. But I think hiring a guy like Josh Crawford could be a step in the right direction. Now, he's also worked with some kids that have been very successful at their level of play. And it'll be, look, when you're a coach, not only are you a developer of the players, you're also a developer of other coaches. You look at Nick Saban and just the development of coaches that he's been able to do. Everyone that's come out of his coaching tree. You're looking at Jimbo Fisher. You're looking at Sarkisian. You're looking at Kirby Smart. Saban is as good of a coach as he is in developing players. He's probably as good at developing other coaches. I mean, they've been like the rehabilitation center for misfit coaches. Sarkisian was one of them. Lane Kiffin was one of them. And the interesting thing is, like, Nick is able to see when he needs to make a change, even fundamental changes. So before Lane Kiffin got to Alabama, it's not that I hate to say it, but they played a very boring, low risk brand of football. Run, 60 to 70% of the time, and pass sparingly and when it makes sense, not taking a ton of risk. He was able to see that needed to change, and that the direction that college football was going in was to compete. You were going to have very electrifying offenses. And he brings in Lane Kiffin and develops him. And Alabama's offense hasn't been the same since. So I imagine Georgia Tech is going to possibly have to make some fundamental changes in how they do things. I'm sure I will make a video completely on that subject. But this is a hire that might not pop off the page as just slam dunk. This is, the greatest hire ever. I get that. A guy that has 2 years of experience at Western Carolina is not the most eye-popping guy. But I'm thinking of him, his relationships with, top Georgia high schools, working with Aaron Joe, working with Buster Faulkner, working with Chris Winkie, all have proven to be very good recruiters. What we're able to do, with every kind of this well-oiled machine firing on all cylinders and every part doing, what it needs to do. So, that's my take on it. Again, I do think Key is every bit. Well, you look at what he got out of the players when he took over. I think we're going to see that possibly with coaches too, where he even starts elevating coaches under him. I get to coach at a level they hadn't before. So I'm excited to see it. So with that being said, I do want to say that I do plan tentatively on doing the first Rec Talk live show Monday. I believe that's the 26th. Let's take a look. Yes, that's Monday, the 26th. That'll kind of be a pilot as I'm learning how to do these live shows. I've got one guy that said he'll be moderator for me, so I'm pleased with that. And I also want to say this before we cut the video off. I want to shout out Bryce Koon, and I'm very grateful of the support he's given the Georgia Tech live show, CDogg, and Rec Talk. He doesn't have to do that, and he would probably not label himself as a professional or seems to be uncomfortable with being referenced that on the live show, but he is, right? That's what he has done for a living, and we appreciate the support he's given us. Also, with that being said, and I don't see a lot of it in my comment section, but there has been a little bit. And none of it on my comic section has been really, I think, ill-intentioned. But I don't necessarily get the hate either. And I'll put it this way. I think the hate that Bryce gets kind of comes from him being somewhat realistic about the program. And it's like when you're writing an academic research paper. Academic honesty comes from looking at things from the other side and looking at it from a different perspective. So at the end of a research paper, and I was a part of a team at Tech that's research was published in IEEE, you say, well, what are the problems that people might have with my premise, right? And you'll list out they might have problems with this, that, and then you try and say, and here's what I will do in the future to correct those problems or what have you. So I do think it's important to look at Tech from the standpoint of, let me take my, Tech fan jersey off a second and look at it like I'm not a Tech fan. and really kind of get at how do we get better. So I don't understand some of the vitriol either, but I'll say that he's a friend of the channel and will always be a friend of the channel. He's always welcome. I'd love to do maybe an interview or something with him, kind of getting into what he's seen. But yeah, with that, Merry Christmas, guys. Don't take life too seriously. Laugh, have a good time, have a good Christmas. Merry Christmas.